11 criminal fraud charges brought over her failed startup's promises of revolutionary blood testing technology. The jury in this case deliberated for more than 50 hours over the course of a week. To help us break down what the jury's verdict really means for Elizabeth Holmes, we're joined right now by litigator Andrew George. Thank you very much for being with us. I know you've represented individual and corporate clients, but I've got to ask you about Elizabeth Holmes' case because she was only found guilty of a portion of the charges, and it really centered on her conspiring or defrauding investors, but not the actual patients. Is that right?
So that's right. As a technical matter, she was only convicted of 4 of the charges that she was charged with. However, as a practical matter, this is a complete win for the government. The government will be able to get the same sentence or virtually the same sentence against her that it would have been able to get had it also convicted her on the investor charges. So she was convicted of lying to investors, of fraud, as well as conspiracy to defraud investors. She was not convicted of conspiracy and of lying to patients. And the jury deadlocked on some of the investor charges, and we can talk about those if you want.
Well, let's talk about it. The fact is that this affects her, but it does say that she didn't expect or try to defraud patients. This was something where, of course, she received massive amounts of funding for this technology. How does that affect this case?
Sure. I think what it tells you is that the jury believed, and I think this was well supported, that she did believe in her product, that she did think that she was doing something real here, and that she wanted her company to succeed. This wasn't vaporware. This wasn't just a pure fraud. The trouble came in what she tried to do to convince investors to support her, right? And that what she did to convince investors was tell them things that just weren't true, right? And so I think that that's how the jury saw it as well. I think that they realized, no, she really did believe in this product. She wanted it to succeed. She definitely believed in it. But in the course of trying to run her business, she also said things to investors that were just not true.
And what was the prime evidence about those untruths, I guess is what we're going to call them?
Sure. So there was evidence of a series of untruths. There were untruths about claims about deployment on the military battlefield, right? That it had been deployed in Afghanistan. When I heard that, and I knew that she had already been deposed on this in her SEC matter, that's tough because it wasn't deployed, right? So to say that it was, that's just not true. That's fraud, right? And then putting Pfizer's logo and other pharmaceutical companies' logos on documents being sent to investors as though those companies were in partnerships with you or supported, were working with you, when in fact, as I understand it, Pfizer had actually already turned them down at that point, right? That is giving investors the false impression that these companies are on board with you, when in fact they're not, right? And so those sorts of things, those are just not true. When it came to the capabilities of the technology, that's a little bit tougher because it becomes harder to say what was in her mind. Did she actually know that this could not do everything that it was claimed to do? Well, I think she, at least in terms of it being able to run that full panel of tests, she must have known that, right? But did she know that it kind of where the line was between the potential of the technology and its actual application? That becomes a little more difficult.
The jury did announce a stalemate on 3 of the charges. The judge will now declare a mistrial on those charges, and those particularly surrounded her defrauding patients. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Oh, wait, excuse me. The 3 charges where they weren't able to reach a verdict? I'm sorry.
Yes, the 3 charges where she wasn't able to reach a verdict.
I'm sorry, let me correct that. No, those were some of the investor charges, right? They acquitted her on the charges relating to the patients, but it was the investor. There were 3 investor charges that she was convicted of and 3 that she was acquitted of. And then there was also a conviction on a conspiracy charge relating to investors. But I think that what they struggled with was the specifics of whether or not she had lied to these specific investors I believe it was counts 3 to 6, where the jury didn't reach a verdict. But to your question of what's the judge going to do now and what will the government do now, the judge will dismiss those charges that the jury didn't reach a verdict on. He'll declare a mistrial on those charges. Now, technically, the government could choose to retry her on those, but it won't, because there's no point. She's already been convicted of enough charges to get a full sentence against her, and adding those additional charges won't accomplish anything. It won't change her sentence.
And it could be 20 years in prison and a fine of $250,000. Do you think that that's a sentence that will be followed through on?
So theoretically, that's right. And so where that 20 years comes from, that's from the statute itself. Says it has up to a maximum of 20 years. The way it will be done won't be based on that. It will be based on what are called the sentencing guidelines, right? And so the judge, working with a probation officer, will calculate what is the proper guideline sentence here. Now, the fact that these charges that she was convicted of, they carried significant amounts of money that came with them in terms of how much the investors were allegedly duped out of, right? I think it's about $140 million, $144 million. If that's the finding that the judge makes, then under the sentencing guidelines, her sentence could be at least 210 months. Could be quite a long time. Now, the judge doesn't have to follow those. Those are advisory. So the judge could decide at the end of all of that to go below the guidelines, right? They're just advisory. But at the end of the day, she's going to have a significant sentence here.
All right. Litigator Andrew George, thank you so much for joining us and making it a little bit easier to. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to click on the red subscribe button below so you can get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.